It's match week 2 of the new EPL season, and we have a full programme this weekend, including the 2 Manchester clubs, and also the 2 who wear claret and blue. Let's start our previews at Old Trafford. It's our first look at Manchester United this season. Sunday, it's a late game on Saturday, so it's a midnight kickoff. Man United take on Crystal Palace, following a very short summer break. The 2 Manchester clubs given an extra week off because of their European exploits. Des Corkill, the only in for Man United has been the signing of Donny van de Beek from Ajax. Gifted midfielder. I think everybody agrees that he's a talented player, but maybe not what Man United needed at the time.
Man United need talented players, don't they? I think so. Just one comment on that: the absurdities of social media. He did a little drag back piece of skill in last Saturday, and Twitter exploded. De Beek is the man for Manchester United. They lost 1-0 to Aston Villa in the game, and so you're just seeing the sheer absurdities of people fawning over a little piece of inconsequential skill in an inconsequential friendly match. And Man United, Man City, in the rest time to make sure that they were fresh enough to play in the league, played friendlies, played football matches. I'm really confused by what's going on at the moment. Man United, rest time, play 2 matches. Yeah, let's go for it. But no, I think we saw enough progress tail end of last year. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to suggest Man United are going to be a threat again this year. But the Greenwood distraction is a problem. We need to see if Marcus Rashford can continue his remarkable form, and whether or not Pogba and Fernandes turn up to play. If they all gel together, somebody like De Beek will have teammates to fit in around him. If they don't and he becomes the Lone Ranger, then there's a problem. It's never about one individual. It's all about the team. For United, is the team going to kick on from last year? We'll find out. I don't think this first test is a huge test because Palace look very limited. But I think we'll find out within the first 10 games or so for Man United if this is a regeneration under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah, according to reports, Bob, a lot of players have just started coming back. Fernandes literally returned this week after the birth of his second child. But you'd think he'd slot straight into that midfield. Paul Pogba is recovering from COVID. Apparently he's returned to training. What do you think of United? There's a lot of talk still about Sanchez. They're pursuing this deal. They don't want to pay the money. Is there unrest? Are they going to build from last season, you think?
Well, it does look, and the way you've been talking on this program, we mentioned 3 players early on that United have missed out on. 4, if you include Gareth Bale, Reguilon, Sancho, and the other guy, it'll come to me, Grealish. Yes, yeah. They were interested. You know, that was almost a done deal a few months ago, according to some reports. So there's 4 major players. I mean, how serious United were about these guys, only they know. But I do believe they're serious about Sancho because they haven't given up on him. And I think they were fairly serious about Grealish. So is it again an example of Ed Woodward not being able to get guys over the line? Remember when David Moyes took over, they couldn't sign anybody, could they, until the last day, and they panicked. It does smack of that a little bit, and I can see a little uncertainty among United fans when one by one these so-called targets are going to other clubs or not being signed at all. So there is that concern because United are nowhere near the full Monty. I mean, they improved, yes, almost single-handedly down to Fernandes, but there are big big amount of room for improvement in that side. Left back, I mean, this Reguilon guy, I mean, he should have been signed by United, even if it was short-term, I feel, because you could have him for a season. Just imagine having a top guy like that, even if you lost him at the end of the season. Okay, that you've got a problem then the following season. But what about this season? I mean, football is instant, isn't it? Very instant. I mean, if you can solve a problem with an outstanding player in a key position for one entire season, you're going to benefit in other areas of the park. And I think that would justify taking the risk on losing him for the following season. So I do think United might be missing out here. And it could be that they're panicked into paying over the odds for Sancho, just to show that, yes, we have signed somebody big. Because Van der Beek, he's a good player and all that, but he's not a headline. Well, it has been under Ed Woodward. And you could see it happening again. Yeah. Don't be surprised if they do sign Sancho for 100 million in the last couple of days of the window.
Imagine if you're Ed Woodward's children asking for a pet. How long would you have to wait for that? All right, a quick word, going into the break, quick word about opponents Crystal Palace here, Keish. We've seen that Roy Hodgson is trying to make it a younger Palace this term. He's brought in Eberechi Eze, who looked really good, actually, when he came on a little bit. They've still got Zaha, one-to-way Zaha, but credit to Wilfred Zaha. He's putting in 100% commitment when he plays. You can't fault him there, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think you can ever fault him. Even last season as well. I know last season he really wanted to leave. He made it clear to the club as well that he wanted to leave. Everton were reportedly in for him. But obviously Everton eventually couldn't agree a fee with Palace and they went with Alex Iwobi instead. And that forced Zaha to stay. And I remember him coming out instantly after that and clarifying and saying, look, obviously I wanted to leave. But if I have to stay here, it doesn't mean that I'm going to sulk and try to force my way out. If I'm here, then I'm going to give all I can for this club. And that's exactly what he did last year. And that's exactly what he's doing this year. The difference is this year, I feel that he's got extra support in the form of Eberechi Eze, who, like you said, Ross, looked absolutely brilliant on match day one. And I think he's going to be really, really good in the Premier League this season because he was absolutely standout for Queen's Park Rangers. He comes in with that bit of flair. He's got that high tempo, high energy about him. And he's one of those players that makes you, stand out from your seat. He's a really exciting talent. But more importantly, they also have Batshuayi up front. Don't forget. And Batshuayi, when he's fit, when he's playing consistently, he can score goals. And having players like that will only make Palace stronger. And I think, everyone is looking at this and saying that, yeah, Man United could get off to a good start. I think this could be really, really tricky for United.
All right. Well, it's a midnight kickoff early Sunday morning. Man United versus Crystal Palace. Arsenal looked like they were a lot of fun last weekend. They take on West Ham, 3 a.m. Sunday morning. The big news here, Des Corkill, is that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has signed Dating. And he's an Arsenal player for 3 years, which is massive. They had to get him on side, right?
I was hoping you weren't going to use the obvious media hook for people to talk about that thing.
But it works so well on radio and TV.
It's amazing, Des. Come on.
So he signed. He's a very, very good player. The goal he scored the other day where he cut in, very similar to the one he scored in the Community Shield against Liverpool, cut in on the right-hand side. He is a talisman. But the big thing that Mikel Arteta has done is he's got Arsenal organised with seeming players who had been written off. Xhaka looks a completely different player. The player I expected him to be actually under previous coaches, but Arsenal look organised. Tierney coming in on the left of that centre three is not a call I would have seen, but he clearly fits that role very nicely. So they're difficult to break down. That's objective number one. Be difficult to beat. And then you've got that little bit of stardust up front to help you pick up the 1-0 wins or make a tight 1-0, a 2-0. And that's where Aubameyang comes in. Lacazette will chip in, the youngsters will come in. And there's clearly a plan there. We've been looking at him in this group ever since the start of the restart, Project Restart, that game against Man City, wondering whether or not Arteta has it. It looks like he does. They're very organised. They look like a football team.
Yeah. Yeah, good. El Neni, everybody thought his career was over. But all right, Arteta and Arsenal have got a couple of tricky trips coming up to Liverpool and Man City. So it's imperative they win at home against West Ham. What can West Ham do here, Bob Holmes? I'm looking at the side. I'm looking at David Moyes. All right, they beat Charlton 3-0 in the Carabao Cup in midweek. Haller scored 2, but he's going to revert to Mikel Antonio up front. He's the favourite for the first manager to be sacked, David Moyes, Bob Holmes is.
He is. Not entirely his fault. I think that's partly down to the unpopularity of the owners, the crisis there. They may panic and decide to get some sort of name in to replace David Moyes just to placate the fans. I mean, even the players have been on social media complaining about certain things, certain deals, notably the sale of their most promising player to a rival, West Brom. It's a very unhappy camp, contrasting with Arsenal. You couldn't get two camps with different moods prevailing across London here. I think this has got a resounding home victory written all over it. I think if West Ham get away with anything less than a 3-goal defeat, they'll be doing very well, quite honestly. They're weak in most positions, and they bought very badly in recent years. That's partly been down to Pellegrini, I think. Wrong choices by Manuel Pellegrini. They paid a very high price for that. Haller was bought by him for about 48 million or something. But at least David Moyes has found that Antonio is probably most effective up front. I mean, you're going to miss him at the back, but he is such a powerful figure and such a handful for any defense to deal with that he can get you a goal. And I wouldn't be surprised if West Ham managed to have a half-decent season if he doesn't get 20 goals. I mean, he was banging them in at the end of last season because he is such a powerful presence there. He can head them, he can shoot with either foot, and he's a very underrated player. Yeah. But in West Ham's circumstances of having a weak defence, you still have to wonder whether he should actually be up there or not helping out at the back. I mean, the guy can literally play in any position. And I wouldn't be surprised if the goalkeeper was ever injured and the substitute didn't come on or something, that it would be Antonio they'd give the gloves to. I mean, he is that kind of player. He's the James Milner sort of figure there at West Ham. No, West Ham, I would say they are prime candidates for the drop, quite honestly.
All right. Well, a lot resting on the shoulders of Mikel Antonio. Arsenal versus West Ham is a Sunday 3 a.m. kickoff. Southampton versus Spurs, the early kickoff on Sunday, 7 p.m. kickoff. Kish, it's a matchup between two of Gareth Bale's former employers.
And this is, I mean, it's. We spoke about Southampton earlier and the struggles earlier in the season and how it just doesn't look good for them at the moment. Spurs, I thought they showed glimpses of ability against Everton here and there. It still looks like a classic Jose Mourinho side where they were sitting very much on the back foot and looking to hit on counter-attacks. But I don't know if they're going to be able to sort out the deals by this game, but it doesn't seem so, which means he's got to go with the existing crop of players that he has. But when you look at Southampton's situation at the moment, Spurs will obviously go into this one as favorites. What I really like about the Spurs side is actually the signings that they've made so far. When you take Reguilon out of the picture, you take Bale out of the picture, just focus on the ones that they've brought in so far. Matt Doherty looked really good last week. There were multiple times. I mean, before the game, we were reading all the stats about how he was one of the right backs with the most amount of touches in the opposition penalty box. And that's exactly what he was doing in that game, getting into the penalty box so often. I like Højbjerg a lot as well in midfield. And I think Southampton will struggle without him this season. So there's a couple of signings in that team that I really like. And I think this season will just be about trying to get the best out of players like, for example, Lo Celso, who didn't exactly have a solid, consistent season last year under two different managers. But he's a great talent, and you need to get the best out of Lo Celso. it's also about getting the best out of one of your highest earners, Tengai and Ndombele.
Which is happening slowly now, right?
It is. He scored against
And Jose
Cardiff
even said
last
nice
night.
things about him.
Exactly, which was so uncharacteristic of him. But hopefully for Spurs, that Ndombele starts to kick in as well. And I have a feeling that with players like Højbjerg working, doing that extra 120% of that defensive duty in midfield, it opens up the space for someone like Ndombele to just play that box-to-box role with a bit more freedom. And I think if he can rediscover the form that made him one of the most highly sought-after midfielders in Europe, then I think Spurs could have a pretty decent squad.
Okay, Des, a lot's been made about Jose and his second season. He often delivers at everywhere he's been in his second season. But there is also a school of thought that's thinking Jose Mourinho is reaching the end of his sell-by date here. Because, I mean, if you watch the documentary All or Nothing, you're thinking, what actually does he do there?
Well, I think Spurs have got Plovdiv in their sights once again for next year. That's the ambition that they have. Let's get over there and complain about the games. So they're a strong team, and Dembele is a great example of the short attention span of football these days. And Dembele came in at the start of last year or the start of last season, whenever that was, years ago now. It seemed like a fantastic signing, and Tottenham fans were genuinely looking, hey, this is a really good sign that we've got here. And we've got Lamela, we've got a little bit of skill, we've got Harry Kane up front, and there wasn't any of the negativity that suddenly kicked in when Tottenham didn't win the first 20 games on the bounce or so. So Ndombele, if he can come through and be the potential, then Tottenham will be one of those inverted commas big six contenders. They have good players, and Gareth Bale is a good player. Yeah. The good thing about English football now is it does seem to be getting a little bit more crowded. Whatever the financial obscenities, it is a little bit more crowded up at the top ends, and there are more clubs who I think you can say, hey, there is a chance at this stage of the season that they can kick on and do well. And Tottenham are in that little group. Confident start. You never know. That can kick on. It's how you start, because it can set the agenda for the rest of the season. So they are good players. Mourinho's a very, very good coach. He knows how to win things. Yeah. I'm happy that he plays negatively. But yeah, don't write Mourinho off. Don't write Tottenham off.
All right. It's also a massive game for Ralph Hasenhüttl and Southampton. Sunday, 7 p.m. kickoff. That one, Southampton against Spurs. Chelsea versus Liverpool is the big tie of the weekend. It's a Sunday 11:30 start. Bob, let's look at Chelsea first, because when we spoke last week, we never got to see them in action. They actually played on Monday. They won at Brighton. It was a winning start. We saw Kai Havertz. We saw Timo Werner, and they looked good, didn't they?
Werner looked better than Havertz, but let's cut him some slack. I mean, this is the first game in a strange season. They've come into another country. They've not been acquainted with everybody yet. So I don't think you can expect wonders right from the kickoff. They only managed to field 3 of their new signings. They're coming in by the trainload, it seems. They've still got to get a keeper, which is the most important thing, you would think. And with Peter Cech as the director of football, it's a bit surprising, to say the least, that Chelsea have got themselves in such a mess over the keeper. Arrizabalaga, to give him his full title, was... everyone knows that he was the world's most expensive keeper when signed for £72 million. But probably not that many realise that he was given a 7-year contract at 195k a week. Now,
Nice.
I don't know where that is on the Des obscenity scale, but I would imagine it's pretty high.
He's fallen off his chair, folks.
He's not even a half decent keeper.
Yeah.
What was behind that? I don't know. I think if it was horse racing, there'd be a steward's inquiry.
it really is checking that all day.
Yeah. Anyway, Chelsea have got a lot of work to do, despite spending
but do you think that they can challenge with the signings? Do you think that? I mean, they have to put in some sort of challenge, right?
Well, they're decent players. I mean, on paper, the players look okay, but how he's going to fit 10 or 11 full international attacking players into the side and keep them all happy? I mean, you've got to keep those guys from last season happy. Your Tammy Abrahams, Hudson-Odois, Mason Mounts, those guys, they will be upset if after their great season last season, when they got into the Champions League, if they are not included, they won't be very happy, and nor will these new signings, because they will also expect to start. So Frank Lampard, he could do with another competition to field a team in. I mean, he's got so many, and yet he's not solved the defensive crisis. He's brought in Thiago Silva, who was great, but the feeling in Paris was that he's past his best. I mean, he will still bring some experience and class, but what about his legs? He's 35, and he's never played the Premier League before. The other guy that they've brought in is not a full international. He's a Sarr. He's a French under-21 international, promising, but not that experienced. And if they're expecting those two to be the two centre-backs, I think he might be in for a bit of a shock. And left-back, Chilwell, a good player, definitely a good player, very promising player, and excellent going forward. But is he a great defender? Even Leicester fans questioned his defensive abilities. I mean, he might be just an upgrade on Marco Alonso. So I don't think, despite a quarter of 250 million being spent, I don't think they've really solved the problems.
All right. Well, Christian Pulisic apparently has a minor hamstring issue, so he's a doubt. Hakim Ziyech, Ben Chilwell, Thiago Silva are working their way towards full fitness. They may or may not make the bench. As far as Liverpool's concerned, big news is that a deal has been agreed with Bayern Munich for 30 million euros to bring Spanish/Brazilian playmaker Thiago Alcantara over. They've been chasing him. He clearly wanted to join the club. He likes the Klopp style of play. This could be a very, very good marriage here, Des Corkill. A gifted player joining the champions of England. Hey.
Yeah, and a credit to Michael Edwards for getting him for the price that he wanted. He wouldn't be bullied by Bayern Munich. And so, again, the signings, this one kind of seems to fit in. If there was one thing Liverpool lack, it's a little bit of creativity in those tight games, a little cute 5-yard pass into space, and suddenly there's an option there. So the hard running style will still continue, and Thiago Alcantara will add real value to Liverpool, who haven't tweaked an awful lot. They've gone same as last year, and as they proved last week against Leeds, when everyone's writing Liverpool off. Even many non-Scouse Liverpool fans are saying, "Oh, Liverpool have got to make signings, otherwise they can't compete." Well, I think this is a good signing that just tweaks a little bit, and there might be one more as well before the end of the transfer window. So, a very different style to Chelsea. I was beginning to like Chelsea because they were giving young players an opportunity, and Roman Abramovich says, "I'm not going to spend big anymore." Then he goes and spends big and makes Chelsea unlikable again. So. Liverpool, it's a cute signing. It's a good signing. It'll be impossible to replicate last season for Liverpool again, I think, but it's a really good signing.
Based on... sorry, Kish.
No, can I just point out that there's Liverpool starting 11 against Leeds last week. When you add all the players up, it's more expensive than Chelsea starting 11. Yeah,
and Liverpool also sold a vast amount more, so you do that.
And Chelsea have a reputation for... Chelsea have that reputation in Europe as well for being able to bringing in players and then selling them at a profit.
Yeah, well, they haven't, because you look at that old net spend league table, and Chelsea are high up there, and they've just spent £500 million. £500 million in one transfer window.
After a couple of summers of not
absolute
spending.
obscenity of this money?
I get it, Des. I get it. All I'm saying is that Liverpool aren't too innocent either.
As a business, Liverpool
all over the Premier League. It happens.
So as a business, Liverpool match income with expenditure. That is reasonable and sensible.
Chelsea didn't spend for a couple of transfer windows there. Two transfer windows.
They've just spent quarter of a billion pounds.
After 2 windows of no spending.
Oh, wow.
All right. The little Des Quiche tete-a-tetes will have to be put on hold for a while. Just to stick on Liverpool a little bit here, Bob Holmes. Based on what we saw against Leeds last weekend, defensively, bit nonchalant. They just need to wake up, realize they're champions. People are going to be gunning for them every game and play accordingly.
Yeah. They were errors which you don't normally see. Van Dijk, I don't think he made a mistake in his first 150 games, and then he makes one there fairly casual. It was as if he was in a training match or something, and he was punished for it. Has to happen. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I don't think Jurgen Klopp is. He's still a great player, best centre-back in the world, absolutely at his peak. Joe Gomez alongside, still a pretty good, solid international, can play it right back, as he did part of the game. I don't think there's anything to panic about. And I think what they're doing is rather is the template that they used to do in the great days of Shankly and Paisley. They tweak rather than change drastically.
Yeah.
They keep the bulk of the side, they keep the system, they keep the dressing room spirit, but they bring in a couple of new faces just to freshen up. And we were wondering about it, but now they've got Thiago. I think he's an absolutely brilliant signing, exactly what they needed. And they could be another Ismail Assar, as Des mentioned. He could be in as well before the end of the window.
Okay, very quickly, Keish. Do you reckon Thiago coming in means Georginio Wijnaldum might be on his way out? Because he's been linked to Barcelona, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, Klopp would like to keep him as well. And I think having them both as an option just strengthens Liverpool's midfield, and that would be great. But from Wijnaldum's perspective, it's hard to say no to a club like Barcelona, especially when you know you've got a coach there who really, really values you from the Dutch national team. And Ronald Koeman wants to make Wijnaldum, build the whole Barca side around players like him and Frankie de Jong at the moment. So I can see this happening, but obviously Liverpool have got no reason to sell unless Barca match the price that they demand. And from Barca's point of view, because of La Liga rules, they can't buy players without offloading existing one. It's the same reason they haven't been able to confirm Depay signing, because they haven't been able to offload Suarez at the moment. And if they want to bring in someone like Wijnaldum, they need to offload more players in midfield.
All right. It is the big tie of the weekend. And Chelsea versus Liverpool is a Sunday 11:30 p.m. kickoff. Taking a look at Aston Villa versus Sheffield United. This is Villa's first game of the season. Dean Smith has nearly a full-strength squad to choose from. Good news, of course, Jack Grealish has signed a 5-year deal. Ollie Watkins scored on his debut, Keish, for the Villa in the Carabao Cup. Do you fancy their chances this season? Are they going to struggle again for you, Aston Villa?
I think keeping Grealish is a huge boost, massive boost. At the beginning of last season, we spoke about how it was going to be difficult for them because they were forced into, making wholesale changes to their squad. From the one that qualified out of the championship, they had to change large portions of it because a lot of them were on loan. And we know how difficult that is in the Premier League, but they were able to survive. And I think they can really build on this year, particularly with Grealish staying. but especially with Ollie Watkins coming as well. A couple of years ago, Ollie Watkins was already being spoken about by your data experts, your football data geeks on Twitter were already mentioning Ollie Watkins' name a couple of years ago and how much of potential he had to be able to come to the Premier League one day. And he's finally here. He's finally arrived. Comes at a pretty expensive price, but that's how inflated the market is in England at the moment. When a championship player is costing you 30 million, that's the same price that Spurs are going to pay to bring in Reguilon from Real Madrid. But that's the price that you got to pay. But Ollie Watkins looks good. I mean, he's scored, and with time, he'll only improve. And I think Villa should do much better this season.
All right. Well, Sheffield United haven't started well this season. They, of course, lost their opener. They also lost in midweek in the Carabao Cup to Burnley. It's a 1 a.m. kickoff Tuesday, that one. Aston Villa against Sheffield United. Man City against Wolves is 3:15 a.m. kickoff on Tuesday. City have, I guess they've strengthened at the back, Bob Holmes. They brought in Nathan Ake, centre-back, who they really, really need. They've also brought in Varane from Valencia to replace Sané, I guess, along the wings. He looks a useful player. Do you think City need to sign more?
I think they need another centre-back, yes. I don't think Ake is regarded as the primary centre-back. They're still looking at Koulibaly. They're having difficulty getting that one over the line. They're looking at other options now. But Ake is a good player. He knows the Premier League well. He was at Chelsea and Bournemouth. Excellent player, left-footed, and can play out from the back, which ticks all the boxes for Pep. But I don't think he is the number one target. But I'd just like to say this about City. Des mentioned Macclesfield earlier on. The joke in Manchester was 20 years ago when City were in League One, that's the third tier, that the Manchester derby was Manchester City versus Macclesfield. And it did happen. It did happen. They played each other. That was the nearest thing to a Manchester derby, because obviously City couldn't play United. Now look at them. It would only cost Gareth Bale not even a week's wages to save Macclesfield. I mean, it's not Gareth Bale's fault that Macclesfield have got in a mess, but I just like to echo what Des has been saying. That is the absolute absurdity of the football situation. When you've got a club, a perfectly decent, well-supported little club, that's the focal point of the community, is allowed to go under for less than what one player earns in a week.
Yeah.
I think there's something very wrong about football and about society when that can happen.
Well, it is outrageous. Hopefully someone will step in and save the day as far as that's concerned. But it's a tough ask, Des Corkill. City are going away to Wolves. Now, last season they lost twice to Wolves. Wolves haven't exactly strengthened in the summer. They haven't got as tough a season as they're going to have, or they had last season, because they started really early. They're not in Europe this season. How do you think Wolves are going to fare?
Very well, because they've got good players. I think in Jimenez, his goal last week, the kind of cushioned side foot volley going back the way of the goalkeepers was a high skill. They're solid defensively, where Conor Cody has utterly earned his international call-up. He's been recognised for there. Dendoncker and the Giammattino had a little bit of creativity in midfield. They've got the Bull Traore to operate down the right-hand side. I think all over the place, they've got good players. They're well coached. Again, there's a little bit about the morality of where all these Portuguese players are coming from and who's making money off the back of it. But that's another of football's immoralities, which is to be addressed another day. But when they get on the field of play, Wolves are a very, very strong unit with a little bit of strength in depth. Not a huge squad, but they've got enough strength in depth to certainly maintain that top 10 place and really frighten the so-called big boys when they meet them. And this is a really tough test for Manchester City, because Wolves are on the back of that opening day victory over Sheffield United, who I fear for, and are looking pretty confident. Tough one this for City. I can see them dropping points.
Do you reckon? Can Wolves win this, Keish, honestly?
Come on, Ross.
Connor Cody, right? That's why I'm coming to you.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. I mean, yeah, with Connor Cody at the back, you can win any football game, can't you? I mean, don't get me wrong. He was terrific against Sheffield United. Roman Saiz looked great as well. He got that one goal for Wolves. Looked super solid alongside Connor Cody. There's two key players to watch. I know you mentioned that they haven't exactly strengthened. They managed to bring in one guy, the football manager wonder kid, Fabio Silva.
But for quite a lot of money.
Anyone who plays the game will know. Anyone who plays the game will know that this kid just explodes in the game and turns into the next best thing. It remains to be seen if he does that in real life, but he's certainly a talent, and he's certainly one to watch. But the other name that everyone should pay extra attention to is the guy that they brought in January. His name is Daniel Podence. They brought him from Olympiacos. He scored for Olympiacos against Arsenal earlier in the season in the first half before joining Wolves in the second half. And when you join in January, it's obviously a bit messy because you're trying to get adjusted to life in the Premier League whatsoever. But now he's had a decent amount of time with the squad. And this is a brand new season, and he looked good on match day one, and he could go on to play a pretty big role for Wolves this season. So keep an eye on Daniel Podence.
All right, we're going to wrap up with me getting a prediction from Des Corkill about Chelsea-Liverpool. Come on, Des.
It's at Chelsea. I think Liverpool and Chelsea will share about 4 goals and come away with a point apiece, which is... I think how the season's going to go. I think this is going to be a really competitive season. You're not going to get a runaway like you did for the last couple of years. So a point apiece from a high-scoring draw.
So here then are your match week 2 fixtures. Everton will be gunning for another win in the early kickoff on Saturday. Leeds United are in action at 10 p.m. And of course, Chelsea versus Liverpool on Sunday is the big one. Until next Friday then, enjoy the football.